Hello, thanks for joining me again on another episode of the Rising Heroes podcast. This is episode 2 of season 2. In season 1, we had over 50 episodes, so you can check it out. In the last episode, I started out discussing about psychological complexes, and I talked about the types of complexes we have: inferiority complex and superiority complex. And I tried as much as possible to talk about what inferiority complex is. But this particular episode, which is going to be a short one, I'm going to be sharing with you some more details about inferiority complex and looking at the common symptoms as well as the types of inferiority complexes that we have or that people may experience. Now, one common sign of an inferiority complex is constantly comparing yourself to others, and another is believing that nothing you do is very good enough. If you start feeling that way, then you know that you're on a journey of feeling inferior or finding yourself within that inferiority complex circle, and chances are that you've experienced feelings of self-doubt and uncertainty at some point. But that may not be enough, except when you begin to have a negative self-image persistently that affects your daily life. Then you are just on your journey to what is called inferiority complex. In the last episode, I explained the genesis of inferiority complex, who brought about the terminology Alfred Adler in 1907, and what the sources may be and what exactly the causes may be, right? And what the most common symptoms are, just to refresh our memories. Symptoms of inferiority complex, they go beyond the bouts of low self-esteem or worries about your ability. They are persistent, right? And so some common symptoms are feeling insecure, incomplete, and unworthy, withdrawal from everyday activities and social situations, comparing yourself with others, feeling of hostility, frustration, nervousness or aggression, insomnia, inability to complete tasks, signs of depression, anxiety, or other mental health disorders. Right. Sometimes it can become being highly competitive. It can become a perfectionist or sensitive to criticism. You're quick to finding fault in others, seeking attention, having trouble admitting to mistakes. Individuals with inferiority complex usually have experienced events during their childhood that foiled their symptoms. And so you may not just isolate just one, but if you check through your childhood, you will realize that certain things have happened during your childhood that probably led the way to what you're feeling right now. And so let's look at inferiority complex and the tendency to blame others. Someone with inferiority complex often blames others for their problems and attributes their weaknesses and problems to their weaknesses. They attribute their weaknesses to factors they can't control, such as them saying that I was raised. So when you find people who are blaming others, too quick to blame others, they always look for something to tie to it. And most times such actions are a way to compensate the negative thoughts that they have towards themselves or towards the things that are happening to them. Now, there is a difference between being inferior or feeling inferior versus feeling inferior, right? So when you know that you're actually inferior and feeling inferior, they are two different things. So for example, you might realize that someone is taller than you or that you're physically inferior to a professional athlete. These are normal and sensible observations, right? Because you're not a professional athlete, okay? And I mean, the person is taller than you, really, so there's nothing you can do about that. But just because you realize you're inferior to someone in certain ways doesn't mean it has to make you feel inferior. Now, where it now happens is internalizing your feelings of inadequacy. Internalizing your feeling of inadequacy can lead to the obsessive thoughts that might signal an inferiority complex. Now let's look at the two types of inferiority complex that we have. We have two basic ones as defined by Alfred Adler in 1907. We have the primary inferiority, which is a type that is thought to start in childhood, usually starts in childhood as a result of feeling helpless and being compared unfavorably with others. And this is a side note to parents, to educators, to teachers, that you don't have to compare children. I remember speaking in a school some time ago. I think it was their end of term program, and one of the parents asked, why don't you give prizes during your end of the session programs? Nothing like best student in this, best student in that, and all that. And the headmistress responded. She said, when you begin to give best prize in this, best prize in that, you seem to forget that children have different capabilities, and you end up making the other person who isn't coming best in maths, who isn't coming best in English. How do you rate a child who is best in terms of respecting people? How do you celebrate a child who has shown so much what can I use now? So much prominence, or so much score in terms of other things that are not academics. And so she was saying that the reason why we don't do that is because we want to celebrate everybody, because a person may not be doing well academically in terms of being the best, but it doesn't mean that person is terrible, and it doesn't mean that person is not good at something else. So please, as much as possible, parents, educators, aunts, uncles, please, as much as possible, do not compare children, whether within the same family or not. Don't say, look at Charles, can't you be like Charles? Look at Cynthia, can't you be like Cynthia? Please don't do that, because it can actually lead to inferiority complex in adulthood. Some people still have beef with other children today just because of how their parents were always comparing them with each other. So please, as much as possible. And the second type is secondary inferiority. These occurs when adults are unable to reach their own subjective goals for security and success. As a result, leftover feelings of inferiority from childhood may intensify. So for the secondary inferiority, this usually happens when adults are not able to match up with what they have set for themselves in terms of the goals that they have set for themselves, in order for them to feel secured and to feel successful. And of course, this doesn't just happen, it also starts from the primary inferiority, primary type of inferiority complex. So I'm going to pause here, and I hope that you know the types of inferiority complex that we have now. You know what the difference is between being inferior and feeling inferior, that they are two different things, and also what the symptoms or what the signs are.